All right.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Too Opinionated. Really excited today. We've got actor John Wesley Shipp with us. So welcome, John.
Thank you. Good to be here.
I've been looking forward to this one. You probably can't tell, I'm a little bit nerdy.
We love that. We love that. Nerds rule, taking over the entertainment industry.
Oh boy, that's the truth. You know, when I was growing up, and I'm sure when you were growing up, being nerdy wasn't necessarily a good thing.
That's exactly what I walked into in 1990 when I did what they call the OG Flash. I was very hesitant to audition for a television treatment of a superhero, because I could envision myself running around in a pair of red tights, and I was like, no. But Danny Bilson promised me that would not be the case. And sure, they were as good as their word.
Yeah. I was so in 1990, I owned a comic book store, and we traded comics to get a TV and to get free satellite, which at that time was Prime Star. It was pre-direct TV. So then we premiered The Flash there in the comic store, and there was probably 20 of us in there, and it was the best because back then you didn't get much as far if you loved comics. There wasn't much out there.
That's right. That's right.
I still remember that because we had the best time.
I'm glad to hear that. Nobody threw anything at the screen.
Nobody threw anything. It was funny because through the 80s, my mother, big soap opera fan. So I'd see you all the time. You were like on every soap opera.
Too much of me. First of all, I ran around in my Speedo singing You Needed Me on Guiding Light for 4 years. And then I got to go to As the World Turns and start as a really good guy. And then in a story brilliantly written by Douglas Marland. And my leading lady was Julianne Moore. Yeah. And Steven Weber was in my storyline. Yeah. And I went all the way out to Crazy. And my demise was being stabbed in the back with a crystal cylinder during a rape attempt. So that got me my first Emmy. And then I went to Santa Barbara and played a girlfriend abusing pompous tennis pro who was thrown through a plate glass window and had surgery, would never play tennis again. It was terribly tragic, and got my second daytime Emmy. Yeah, I've been on all the shows that are no longer on the air.
Yeah. Well, there's not too many of those left. There's a few. Yeah, but back in the 80s. Yeah, that's right. That one's still there. I mean, the 80s was it. That was daytime TV.
Well, that was the way to get in the late 70s when I moved to New York. There were, I think, 9-10 soaps shooting in New York, and you could get your AFTRA card by getting a walk-on or an under 5 or a day player on a soap. So that's what you really shot for, to get into the AFTRA union. And then after you were in AFTRA for 6 months, you could join SAG. So that's how I got my union cards at the beginning. But I feel for new kids coming up. There isn't as direct a route that I'm aware of.
There's no pipeline.
Yeah. Pipeline, that's the word. Exactly. Right.
Did working in soap operas, did that help you with your acting? Because I mean, it's every day. You're learning lines every day, and you're doing them, kind of live. You're having to you don't really have any prep ahead of time, maybe a day.
Yeah. We would usually get our script. The answer is yes, it did help with my acting. And I would say people could call soaps a good training ground. My argument is you better be ready when you get to daytime, because primetime does an hour a week, usually 7-8 day shoot. And we were churning out an hour a day, 5 days a week, 365 days a year. So, you had to know what you were about. We'd get our scripts usually a week in advance. So over the weekend, I would break down my scripts, I'd break down my scenes, And then the night before I was shooting the next day, I would study the next day's lines. When I first started, I'm such a relic. They still were holding the lines in the cue boxes where the lines would roll, so that if you began to forget, and if you were clever, you could, be thinking, you could glance over, you could get your line, and you could come back and say your line. I could never do that. It was so obvious. And I was working opposite this actress. It was so funny. So clever. You could tell when she was about to go up, because she'd be saying a line and then her eyes would get real big, and then she'd go, and then she'd go back and could do this. I was like, that doesn't work. About 6 months into my tenure on Guiding Light, they got rid of that already. But yeah, when I came back to soaps after Flash, played a crazy character on All My Children, Carter Jones. When my front line story hit the front burner, I was doing 30, 40 pages of dialogue a day, just my scenes. And doing a Broadway show.
Unreal.
Yeah.
And you were doing a Broadway show.
Dancing at Lunasa, which won the Tony that year as best drama. So that was pretty exciting time.
Yeah, that's amazing. The 40 pages of dialogue, that just sounds so daunting. And if you're having to do it daily, weekly, it's amazing.
Well, I can learn lines pretty fast. And what I learned was, you don't learn the words. You learn the intentions. You learn what you want. You learn how you're going to go about getting it. And once I've analyzed my script, the lines pretty much come. I would do my nighttime performance on Broadway, then I'd go home and 11:30, 12 o'clock and look at my lines the next day, make any changes that I would propose. Sometimes they would accept them, sometimes they wouldn't, analyze my script for the next day. But that was a great fun character. He was just so wicked. It was actually the only daytime character that served as the basis for a thesis at a major university, because he was so violent towards women and was at the same time so repulsive, and yet like a train wreck, the audience couldn't look away. So they were talking about that intersection of attraction and violence on daytime. But
that's pretty interesting. And that was your role of
Carter Jones. That was right after the Flash, when I came back to New York to do Dancing at Lunasa.
Did you also play him in another soap opera?
No, that was the only time I played Carter Jones. But
okay,
I came back to daytime in 2000. You may be thinking he was also a really reprehensible character, which bordered on vaudeville, I must say. I mean, it's the closest I ever came to twirling my mustache. I mean, the guy that I played on One Life to Live in 2010, Eddie Ford. Yeah. I had such tremendous fun also working with three great young actors, who, a lot was not in the script. So we would delineate our relationships. We were always working in the 5-minute breaks, and they let me have so much freedom. I really think if I had said, okay, at the end of this line, I want to strike a match and set the TV on fire, I think they all would have handed me their lighters. I mean, they were like, go for it. Make him as absolutely as, and so much so that it was there was humor in it until the very end. And then with my good friend, Hillary Bailey Smith, when I had her tied up in the Minuteman Motel, and there was all this, sexual, abusive, really behavior, which we worked out beforehand, we did it like a dance. You'd have to. And I was ready to put old Eddie Ford to bed, but I still have fond memories of that character.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about that. It was but I thought, okay, that must have been what I was thinking of, but I don't think so. I was thinking that you did a character named Carter on Loving.
Oh, yeah, it was the same character. Oh, I know what you're talking about.
That's what I was thinking.
During the same time, the storyline was so successful that Carter was on a lifeboat with Melody Anderson, And I was doing things I could never think of doing today. At one point, I just wanted her to love me, right? But she didn't. She was trying to get off the boat. I took off my belt. I wrapped it around. I was smacking her. She picked up a pan of hot grease and threw it in my face. It was so unbelievably violent. And they built this huge boat at the one end of the soundstage, what was on springs and had reflectors. So all day we were working on a boat. The beginning scene of Dancing at Lunasa was a tableau where we're supposed to be frozen. And I'm sitting there, my character, Jerry Evans, he had a cane. So I'm supposed to be sitting there with my arm propped jauntily on my cane. And I'm going like this. I still feel like I'm moving. But yeah, that was, they took him, they cornered him on the lifeboat. I jumped off the lifeboat on all my children and swam to Loving. And then I created havoc over there. The All My Children cast went over to Loving, captured me, took me back, and put me in a prison for the criminally insane, which I suppose I am still languishing to this day,
Waiting. That was another great thing of the time back then, because TV shows would do that. They'd cross over into shows that you wouldn't think would have a connection, but that happened all the time back then.
Yeah. I wasn't, I don't know if they did it in the 80s. If they did, I wasn't aware of it. But they certainly did it. We certainly did it in the early 90s. That's funny that you mentioned that, because technically, there's so much made over the Flash crossovers, and me doing a crossover by taking my Jay Garrick to Blue Valley, Blue Mountain, Blue Valley, in Stargirl. That I guess my first crossover was All My Children to Loving and back.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's pretty great. That's pretty great. When you played Barry Allen back in the 90s Flash, had you read any of those stories, or did you go back after the show and check some of those out?
I wish I could say that it was the fulfillment of a lifelong dream, but I was not raised, on comic books or being aware of comic books. They said, I'm so embarrassed to admit this, they said The Flash, and I said, you mean Flash Gordon? And they were like, no, The Flash. So now, yeah. No, I was pretty ignorant of the whole thing, and I didn't realize the detail that the comics went into about the families and the character. I didn't know. All I knew from comics was the 1960s Batman, of which I was a huge fan.
Of course.
But, I didn't think that's where my talent lay. It wasn't what I was particularly interested in doing. And I remember April Webster, casting director, multiple Emmy Award-winning casting director in Los Angeles. She said, just read the script. Read Danny Bilson and Paul DeMeo's pilot, hour and a half, 90-minute pilot. Because I said, well, April, all my training is truth of the moment and trying to make things as real and sincere and honest. I'm not really, she said, well, that's why we're coming to you, because we're starting a new paradigm for how to tell these stories on television. And it's the most expensive show Warner Brothers have ever done for television. They will build 4 high construction suits, the cost of $100,000 in 1990. And read. And then I read their script, and I really related to Barry Allen. I related that his first reaction to getting these powers was, I don't want them.
Right.
I loved it. He was CSI, baby, before CSI was cool.
That's right. That's right.
He wanted to stay in the crime lab, but the unblessed son of a cop family where real cops, according to his dad, worked the streets. But I was in the crime lab, which was second best, because it was safer, allegedly. But and so I read on, and then, okay, he assumes his powers after his brother gets killed to avenge his death. And then he has these powers that would make his dad so proud, and he can't tell him. Well, I could relate to all of that.
Yeah.
So I auditioned, you know, they auditioned, I think it read about 60 guys, I think I was told. And they took me and one other actor to the network, which will take years off your life, those network tests, with 15, 20 executives in the room, you know?
Brutal.
It's like Armageddon. And so then they looked at some tape, they requested some tape, and then they cast me. I always say it got back to me that one of the reasons they cast me, and I hope it's not true, is that Jeff Skinsky, who was so supportive and so wonderful through the whole thing, apparently said that guy's head would look good on a lunchbox. You know, I hope that's not why.
I kind of hope that is true.
No. And that began the longest night. Let me see. We shot the pilot for 6 weeks in May and June. And then from the third week in August to the second week in May, we were there with 4 days off for Christmas, and that was it. We shot this enormous show because we didn't have CGI. So it was hours and hours and hours of live action practical effects. And Danny and Paul and Howard Chaykin and all the other people, wonderful creative people involved, were gonna get it right. They were gonna make an hour movie a week, and they were gonna make it the way they wanted to make it. So even though we were budgeted so lavishly, we were always overtime. I think I had it hard, and I did. It was physically hard, but I think of our transportation department, of our grips, they're putting in 24, 25-hour days. I mean, it was insane. But, you know, I think it's why, and this surprises me, and I'm so grateful for it, that the show still has so much resonance today. You know, it amazes me that this many years later, it was just my birthday. So I want to thank everyone,
Happy birthday,
you know, who's been sending me 20 seconds with these incredible messages. I'm reading through them. I'm getting to every one of them. They're just so affirming, and they're so affirming about what the 1990 Flash meant to them and when they were kids, and now they're sharing the new Flash with their kids, you know, and it's very meaningful to me. I want people to know when they write me, I read it.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's as a fan, that's all we ever wanted, you know, just somebody to know that we're watching out there.
Well, you know, I tell them in my Q&As, you're the reason for the season. I mean, if you weren't watching, you know, we wouldn't be there. So
yeah, that's for sure. That's true. And I can tell you from my old comic book days, I mean, we had so much fun watching, you know, what we're reading actually make it to the screen. And there was a few things by then. I mean, you had Michael Keaton's Batman, you know,
that had just
Batman, Superman, but not much.
Yeah, Michael Keaton's Batman and our Flash were in development at Warner Brothers at the same time around this new aesthetic, darker. I remember someone said, Carmen Infantino said, they're always shooting at night. Everything's so dark. The streets are always wet. Flash isn't supposed to be dark. And he's right. But we felt like we had to, coming out of a palette in which everything was spoofed up until Michael Keaton's Batman, we felt we had to go dark. We had to ground it in some seriousness and go a little bit grittier. I'm surprised at some of the stuff we did. I was watching one of the trickster scenes with Mark Hamill where he mind controls Barry Allen, and the police are chasing us, and I'm knocking over parking meters and stealing the money and acting. And then the police shoot at us, and I catch the bullets and throw the bullets back at the police. I'm like, whoa, we would never, ever do that today. So we were, I think, darker in tone, certainly than the current show, I believe. But it was amazing. And the actors I got to work with, we had so many wonderful guest stars, and it was just an amazing experience.
Yeah, that's so great. I don't know if you're a Star Wars fan, that would have messed me up, Mark Hamill coming on my show.
I have to tell you, we had a director when Mark came on the new show. to play a version of the trickster.
Yeah.
And he had me, it was the scene where I was tied up under a box of knives. Barry comes in and rescues me and pulls his cowl back. It's the first time he admits that it's him. Henry already knows it. I'm Henry Allen at this point. And in between takes, the director, who I love, came over to me and he said, "That's Mark Hamill over there." I said, "I know."
Yeah, you work with him once or twice.
Yeah, I said, "I know. Isn't it awesome?"
Is it easier working on the new CW shows now that they do have special effects and they can do some of that stuff without?
I would never say it's easy. I can't believe that Grant has lasted into his 8th season. Just the thought of it, you know. Having said that, we had 9-day shoots, 2 units shooting pretty much simultaneously.
Yeah.
And I was shuttled back and forth. I'd be there 55 to 80 hours a week. You know, we by midweek, we'd be shooting all night till dawn. We'd be tending in the back lot to shoot day for night. We'd be going home as the studio executives were coming to work going, "Man, you guys are insane," you know. And then we'd work till 9 o'clock, 10, sometimes 10 o'clock Saturday morning. And then we'd be back in at 7 a.m. on Monday morning. And as I told you, it was that way from August to May. And I didn't know when it was 6 o'clock, if it was 6 p.m. or 6 a.m. You know.
Those are long days. Yeah. And they were bouncing you around to different shows and giving you different versions of the same character. I mean, not a terrible.
Well,
game.
now it's they do have, and it looks great, and I think it's awesome. They do have the possibility of CGI. I remember Andrew Kreisberg, after I saw the pilot, he said, and I saw him, he said, "I bet," and the tornado and everything, and the streak, the way they were doing the lightning spark for the place. And I bet you're surprised. I bet you're surprised what we can do. I said, "Yeah, man, it looks fantastic." But no, it's been, I've been amazed by Grant's work and his enthusiasm throughout years, you know, playing this character, his enthusiasm and his commitment. I've been really happy to see.
Yeah. And he looks like he's enjoying himself. But you're right.
It's but it's hard. I mean, when you're the Flash on the Flash, I don't mean to say that any of their job is easy, because that kind of a show, the hours are what the hours are,
right?
You know, and he's got the extra added challenge of working in a suit. Although when I became Jay Garrick, and then when they put me back in a new version of the original suit that I wore in 1990, I thought there have been improvements, you know, in the suits over which we would hope over a quarter of a century.
Yeah.
You know, that there would be improvements.
Does it breathe better now?
Yes. And also, the main thing is they can clean them.
Oh, nice.
Back in 1990, it was sculpted foam latex individual muscle pieces glued on a spandex suit, flocked with a red material, and then sprayed with a sealant, because I was sweating through it and sweat was running down the muscles, you know, keep all the sweat inside. And then the foam latex was crumbling from about the 3rd episode. It's constant repair. That 2 for me, 2 for Dane Farwell, my awesome stuntman.
Yeah.
And they'd hang mine in the trailer and spray it with Lysol, and it'd still be wet and sticky the next morning when I went to put it on. But now there are undersuits, like Under Armour, with the heightened musculature. And I know for my Jake Garrick, it's like a leather outer. So I can take off the outer pants and shirt, and they can wash the Under Armour.
Thank goodness.
Which makes it a much more pleasant experience for everyone, you know.
Yeah. That probably got a little stinky after a while.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, if you ever put on like a latex glove or something and gotten sweaty in there and stuff, a whole suit just of that's terrible.
Yeah, they'd spray it with, I heard it was a combination of vodka and for one of the suits, but mostly it was, I think, and what I could tell, what I mostly smelled was Lysol.
Yeah.
That's what when I would put it on. But yes, it was challenging. It was difficult to work in. We had to glue the cowl, but I'm proud. Both the 1990 suit and the 2014 suit were designed and built by Oscar winners. Ours, Bob Shore, Beetlejuice. So it served its purpose, and I'm very glad that even all these years later, so many people still love that suit.
Yeah. Oh, it's a great suit. Yeah. That's still, in my mind, that's still the Flash suit.
Yeah.
When you were growing up and in school, did you do athletics, or were you already doing more of the acting theater type of thing?
No, I was more into the literature courses, the acting, music. I went to Indiana University on a voice performance scholarship in the opera theater department, largest opera school in the country. I switched my major to theater, and then I'm college dropout. I've dropped out and moved to New York to continue my training in the late 70s.
So, can you sing?
Yeah, well, not so much anymore because, with the encroachment of age, something happens to the vocal cords. And plus, on stage and on TV, I've played so many crazies that I've when I was doing the gig on Broadway, 8 shows a week, I'd go to ABC at 7 a.m. On matinee days, they'd have a car waiting for me to go to the theater to do the matinee, have a car waiting for me to go back to ABC, shoot in the afternoon. And then I'd go do the evening performance. And Carter was crazy. I mean, he was violent, and then he would cry because he heard.
I was hard on the voice.
Yeah, I ended up hemorrhaging a vocal cord.
Oh my gosh. I didn't even know you could do that.
Right at the end of the run, I had this little song I danced along with one of the sisters to the gramophone, we called it, in the garden. Anything goes is how we pronounce it. Anything goes. So I'm singing along, and Jan's face, I remember suddenly, I think everything's fine. Suddenly she's looking at me like, I didn't know what was wrong. And then when I stopped singing, I could taste a little bit of blood in my mouth. So, and I asked her, it was right at the end of my part, and I said to Jan, what happened? She said, well, you were singing along, and then suddenly you didn't change anything you were doing. You just stopped making sound.
So weird.
I had to go through the, I tried vocal rest. It actually gave my understudy a week and a half to perform the role.
Yeah.
So he could have, because I had to go silent. He had to go, how they handled that on All My Children, thank God, is at the very end of the storyline. And they sent me to the prison for the criminally insane. And I would lay there comatose on a cot, and didn't, and but it's, I don't know how I got off on all that, but.
Oh, but that's awful. That is a terrible story. But
I have to tell you, whisper. I think of that period as one of the most exciting periods of my life, because I was running for about 6 months.
Yeah.
It was so, I couldn't do it today. I wouldn't want to repeat it, but we did crazy things like that. Lisa Brown, who just recently passed away, was on Guiding Light, was doing 42nd Street on Broadway while she was doing Guiding Light, and you can do those things when you're younger. That's
right. It gets a little more difficult as we age. That is.
I think we become a little less willing.
That's it. The downside doesn't sound as good.
Could I do that? Could I maybe get away? Do I want to?
That's it. Do you want to? That's usually what.
It's like now the kids do all the heavy lifting on the new show. I come in when it's important, when they need me for either a plot like Crisis. I love the way they used me in Crisis.
Yeah.
I loved playing Henry Allen. Those are some of those intimate scenes with Grant in the prison, Iron Heights, are some of my favorite of my entire career. It was a blast becoming Jay Garrick, the way they did that, which was the character fans wanted me to play to begin with,
Yeah.
And but but the kids do the heavy lifting. I feel guilty sometimes. I get to come in and scoop a little cream off the top every once in a while, but it's always great to see those guys.
I love seeing you show up on Stargirl. I'm a big Justice Society fan, so that was neat seeing you show up there. Fun? Yeah,
that was a lot of fun. I have to tell you, also, Jeff Johns writes Jay Garrick, and in some ways, since Jay was in his element, there was no Justice League yet, as we know, but it was Jay's society, his seat of authority. I felt in some ways more Jay Garrick than I had ever been.
Yeah.
In those scenes.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I hope, and there's talk, that there will be more Jay Garrick in Stargirl. So I'm waiting.
Yeah, there needs to be.
I'm waiting for the call.
I'll get on the phone. I'll see what I can do.
Oh, today is Jeff Johns' birthday, by the way. So shout out to Jeff Johns. Happy birthday. I'm so glad we're in each other's lives. It's been a great ride.
That is terrific. Yeah, he's such a good writer. I mean, I was such a fan of his before he started doing television.
He's a good guy too. Good guy too. I mean, there are those producers that just stay away from the set. Just don't interfere. Let the director and us work it out. That's not Jeff. I would want Jeff to be there. If Jeff was in my eye line, that would be fine with me, because you feel nothing but support. Right. And he loves the medium so much, and you can feel that translates.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's true. Well, yeah, and he does. He understands the history, and all the variations of the Flash and Justice Society and all of that. So who better to have helping to run it? Yeah,
that's terrific. A good little show, man. That's a good show. I remember reading the script that they sent me, and I was like, wow, this is so interesting, because there's the light and the dark.
Yeah,
it was a surprising amount of weight to a show that is built around a teenage young woman.
That's right.
But what they also get, because she's a teenager, I always think the most interesting part of the story is the origin story. It's always that's why season 1 of The Flash was so interesting. He's getting to know his powers, doesn't quite know how to use them yet. That's always the most interesting part. And with a teenager, everything is discovery.
That's true.
They have a rolling origin story.
Yeah.
So I think it really works.
Yeah, completely agree. So I got to bring up Dawson's Creek, because I remember the 90s, and when that show came out, I mean, that was the show. That's the one everybody was watching and talking. Really before the internet, people were getting together and talking about what happened on Dawson's Creek the night before.
Yeah, people forget, because it became such a pop cultural phenomenon, and anything that goes that high inevitably has to have a crash.
Of course.
Before it assumes its rightful place in the history of entertainment. But people forget that we were the critically acclaimed Dawson's Creek at the beginning, that we were editor's pick of the week, that there had not been a show for young people written. Again, I happened to land, I've landed at sort of seminal moments in different mediums. The youth explosion on daytime. Kevin Bacon was my dressing roommate for a while. I worked with Julianne Moore. And they began to get primetime numbers in the early 80s. And then The Flash, a new way of telling superhero stories for television. And then Dawson's Creek, a new way. Imagine if we write instead of writing down to a young audience, what if we write up to a young audience? I remember a big star said to Kevin Williamson after the pilot, kids don't talk that way. And he shot back, maybe not, but they'd like to.
I love that.
And you know what? I believe Kevin Williamson talked that way when he was in high school. So, he was writing from his experience. But yeah, that was what is it? It's an anniversary. I've been seeing Happy Anniversary Dawson's Creek. I don't know which one it is, but
30 maybe?
Maybe it was, I think it's, yeah. What was it? 1997, 1998?
25 maybe then? Yeah, probably 25.
So it was a very special show. I was off in Moab, Utah, doing a project with David Carradine and Lee Majors and Kathy Lee Crosby and Michelle Green called The Lost Treasure of Dos Santos. So I was not originally cast as Dawson's father. There was another actor who did the pilot presentation. Then they always decide to change something. And so they called me and I auditioned and I went in and reshot those scenes and then picked it up with the second episode and went forward. But I remember when they sent me that pilot, don't worry about that actor. I was sitting in the theater watching my favorite actor, Al Pacino. And here he comes doing a scene with Al Pacino. So, I got Dawson's Creek. He got the movie with Al Pacino. So
he did
no violins for him. But I remember watching it thinking, this is unique. I haven't seen anything like this. The Creek was a character. The way the kids had and thought about all the conflicted emotions they were having and had a vocabulary to express them. How the parents were supporting characters but had independent storylines that intersected with and informed the young people what was happening with the main characters, the kids. So it was a very and the fact that we shot it in Wilmington, North Carolina, and we were kind of in a protected enclave away from Hollywood. The cast bonded, the crew bonded. It was a unique and wonderful experience for a number of years.
It definitely progressed a lot of younger people's careers from that show. I mean, you look back and you look at that cast and you're like, wow. You just didn't when it first came out, thought good show. I don't know any of these people.
Right.
Well, you know them now.
Right. And it was fascinating watching that happen up close, watching them go almost overnight, relatively unknown. Of course, Josh had done the Mighty Ducks. So he was probably the most known, but I remember Mary Margaret telling me he was either with James or after James signed his first autograph, he went to Mary Margaret, and told her, I just signed my first autograph. When Varsity Blues came out and became the #1 movie in America, his parents weren't in Wilmington. So he asked me and Mary Margaret to go see it with him.
That's nice.
And, sit in the back of the theater and see it. So we were the surrogate parents.
That's terrific.
On the set. Yeah, it was terrific. It was
that. If you look back, that's the show. I mean, it launched a whole different version or variety of show. There's a ton of those type of dramas since then.
Right.
But that was the one that really started all, and still probably the best one in my opinion.
Well, that's why I say to Grant, it's like there are people writing about television who don't necessarily have an archive of experience about the development of television. And sometimes I will read a comment or something about My Flash in 1990. Then I'll go back and read the reviews that were written at the time in the Washington Post, in the New York Times, in the Louisville Courier Journal, in all the major papers, I just want to tell Grant, 30 years from now, if you want to know and remember the impact that your show had, go back and read the reviews that were written at the time. you know, and then you can assess how it held up.
Yeah,
how it's
that's
held
really
up or
good
how it-
advice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that a lot. So you've over the years you've appeared in a bunch of shows that I enjoyed. I still remember you had a couple episodes on NYPD Blue.
Oh yes, man. Oh yes, yes. They
Yeah.
saw more than me than they ever wanted to. Yeah, I was one of the first butts on primetime.
I wasn't going to bring that up, but I was like, I'm pretty sure.
Yes, yes, we broke new ground. And it was very funny because I don't know if it was a coincidence, but that was after Flash, a couple of years, several years after Flash. And there was in one of the magazines, either the New York Magazine or the New Yorker, there was a cartoon, and there was a superhero standing on a corner. And there was a little old lady looking up at him, and the line was, "Why, yes, madam, I do have buns of steel." And that came on not long after I had been on NYPD Blue, but yeah, that was fun. I loved that character because it was so different from what people had seen me do before, play that drug addicted cop, Brooklyn, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a great role. I mean, we really enjoyed it. And then you showed up on The Closer, which was another one of my favorites.
Oh, yeah. Which is interesting because, of course, Kira is Kevin's wife.
Right.
We were briefly dressing roommates at the outset of our careers. In fact, I think he had directed the episode right before mine. And I thought how interesting it would have been to have been directed by
great.
Kevin. Yeah.
Well, did you let her know that you had a history there?
You know what? I didn't bring it up.
Yeah.
Because having been the number one on the call sheet, the lead in the show, I mean, she was working very hard and she was very concentrated most of the time, and other projects in development. And I wanted to keep our relationship about what we were doing in the moment in that story on that set, and not be one of these, I know your husband, we were dressing room back in the day, no, keep it as pure as we can. If there had been a moment, I certainly would have brought it up, but no, I didn't mention it to her.
I'm sure she knows now. Because when she went home, Kevin would have been like, hey.
That's right.
Funny story.
Yeah, we were on Guiding Light together for a year or two. Yeah, it was a triangle. Morgan, Kelly, and Tim, and he played Tim.
Oh, very nice. Yeah, that's very nice. If you weren't the Flash, but you had the opportunity to be a different hero, do you have somebody that you'd want to be?
Well, I've been so many different versions that it's
been all the versions.
I think I'm covered. I've been Barry. I've voiced Professor Zoom. I've been Henry. I've been Jay Garrick, and then I came back full circle to my original characterization. I hesitate to say it because I think it's pretty much what a lot of people would say, a lot of actors would say, but it's very difficult to resist the darkness of Batman.
Yes, of course. Well, you've got the chin. I was thinking Batman because you've got the chin. It would fit for that, the cow.
Yeah. Plus, he's conflicted. It's darker. The thing I love about the Flash and what I loved about Barry is he's a good guy. He's not a vigilante. He just is trying to do the best he can with the information he has. I always say his heart is in the right place and his head is always trying to catch up. I mean, it's like when Jay snatches him out of the Speed Force, and it's like, what are you doing with my Speed Force? Are you going to change it every time you have a fight with your girlfriend? It's like he always doesn't know what to do, but he's trying as sincerely as he knows how. And that is beautifully illustrated in Grant's portrayal, to do the right thing, the thing that would be best for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that too, and I think that's part of the reason I enjoyed the comic book, because that's who Barry was in the comics. You know, he was kind of the reluctant hero, just trying to do the best he could to
Reluctant
help.
hero.
Yeah,
Reluctant hero. Absolutely.
yes.
See, you said it in 2 words when it took me a paragraph to say. How'd you do that?
Well, that's why you're the actor. You know, you're supposed to be a little more verbose.
Verbose.
But John, thank you so much. This has been just a real pleasure. I've been looking forward to you coming on the show, probably since like 1990.
Oh, wow. Yeah, but
I didn't even have a show back then.
You were this big. Could you talk yet? Were you talking yet? Were you walking yet in 1990?
Oh yes, the hair was better, but
okay.
Had better hair back then. I didn't appreciate it, and one day it was like, I'm out.
It happens.
Oh my goodness. Well, John, thank you so much. I hope that we'll get you back. We were talking before we got here. We'll get you back in West Virginia, at Morgantown, or down in Huntington again, because we missed out. We had planned to go to both of those, and circumstances happened. We didn't get to go. So, got to get you back. I hope
I get to meet you. I also want to remind everyone that The Flash is back on the CW. I just got back from a looping session, so it looks great. It's going to be back on Wednesday night, March 9th on the CW.
Well, that's exciting. That's very exciting. Yeah, can't wait. Can't wait. That's one show, especially of the superhero variety, that has held up. I mean, it's been like 8 seasons now, and it's held up. Still really compelling. Yeah. Who did your Flash on your door back there?
Oh, that's Joe Staton.
Very nice. I thought it might have been, but
I have a picture of him drawing that for me at Terrificon, Mitch Halleck's Terrificon in Connecticut. And I tell you, it's one of my proudest moments.
Yeah, that's terrific.
Because if it weren't for those guys, none of us would be here, none of us actors. We wouldn't have these characters to play.
Yeah, that for sure. That's true. I thought that looked like his type of art. That's why I was asking. It's kind of familiar. Back when they were doing conventions back in the 90s, that there was no, I mean, it's better now because it's more inclusive and it's bigger. You've got cosplayers, you've got you've got actors and TV stars, movie stars. But back then it was just the comics. So you get the writers and the artists. That was it. That was the convention. Yeah. So you got, and that part of it I miss a little bit, because those guys are so talented, but they're, you go to conventions now, they're there, but they're not the main stars anymore. It used to be, they were the stars.
Well, they are really something. Yeah, I remember what San Diego Comic-Con was like in 1990. It wasn't nothing like it is today.
Overall, better now. More included. So many more people involved now.
It's overwhelming. It's overwhelming now. It's really overwhelming.
Yeah, it sure is. It sure is. Well, John, before you go, is there anything else you're working on that we can kind of keep an eye out for?
No, I'm supposed to shoot a movie called Climbing Life this spring. It's in development, and we had a reading and a fundraiser for charity for that a while back, and it was delayed because of COVID. I was also working on a play by David Gregory about Henry Fonda and Jimmy Stewart and their lifelong friendship, despite vast political differences and romantic rivalries. And it's sort of like an allegory about how do you maintain a friendship, a lifelong friendship, in the midst of some pretty heated disagreements, which I think is very useful in today's day and time. We workshopped it in New Orleans, and then it got put on the shelf during COVID. So we hope to dig that back out, but we'll just, we take it as
you need to. Who are you playing in that one?
Henry Fonda.
Yeah, that's what I figured. I figured you were. That's great. Yeah. Yeah. I would love to see that. Yeah. You got to get that out
Yeah.
there. Last thing, John, is are you on social media? And if you are, where can we find you?
I am. I have 3 accounts, and I always say that because there are fake John. I get messages that fake John Wesley Shipps have contacted people with using my picture, but I have 3 accounts. It's John Wesley Shipp on Twitter, John Wesley Shipp on Facebook. My handle on Instagram is John Wesley Shipp Jr. because there's already, the name says John Wesley Shipp. The handle on Instagram is John Wesley Shipp Jr. All 3 accounts are verified, and if you get a message from any other account, it's not me.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. That means nobody is copying me. That means you're very famous if you've got copycats.
I guess.
All right, John, hold on 1 second. All right, so that was John Wesley Shipp. Unbelievable. That was a big one for me because it was his Flash show from the 90s was such a big moment in my comic book store history. I remember having that group get together in the store around an old console TV that we had talked a Prime Star installer into hooking us up for free, and we got to watch that. And it was such a good show, and to get to share it with a group of people that was so into comic books at the time, it was just the best. It was just the best. Such a good memory, and it's just a real honor to actually get to talk to him. And I left out a few things I wanted to cover. He was in the show Sisters and was terrific in it, so I should have mentioned that. And he also did, and I wanted to ask him about the name because I couldn't recall the name, but he did a Western, kind of like an audio drama, similar to what we'll be releasing soon, The Last Saturday Night, except his audio drama was a Western. He played a sheriff. I wanted to ask him about that. So we'll have to get him back on at some point and bring a few of those up. But hope you guys enjoyed that interview. Such a positive guy, and just came, with a lot of enthusiasm, positivity. He's obviously very used to dealing with fans. Just terrific. Thank you guys for tuning in again this week. We don't take that for granted. We appreciate it so much. You can help us out by subscribing to our YouTube channel, Meisterkhan Pod, trying to build those numbers. So, if you're inclined, if you want to help us out, that's the easiest way to do it. You just click subscribe. Easy. And I guarantee, as a reward, we'll send you tons of great interviews. If you enjoyed this one, we have all kinds of interviews on there. We're up to 330 some episodes in a little over 3 years. So there's plenty of material there. I know you'll find somebody or something that you like. So YouTube, Meisterkhan Pod, and you can find audio and video versions of all our episodes on our website, meisterkhan.com. So check that out as well. If we're doing in-studio events, if we're going to any conventions, if we're doing live, on location events, all of that will be on there, meisterkhan.com. So until next time, bye, everybody.